Tom, Ross, absolutely fantastic to have you on the show. It's a big day for the podcast because you are our first Oscar winners on the show. Thank you for
Oh
being here.
gosh,
What an honor.
that is an honor. Thank you for having us. Yeah, it's still very strange to hear that being said about us in the same sentence. So we're not quite used to it yet, but we're very pleased to be here.
It's an incredible achievement and absolutely deserved. We're going to talk about it in a moment. But let's start with last week because I saw you guys in person last week at the British Short Film Awards, the third annual British Short Film Awards. You picked up Best Director for your phenomenal, I think, final third short film, The Golden West. Let's talk about the awards. How important are they? Not just as an accolade for filmmakers like yourselves, but as a way of bringing together filmmakers.
Oh, it's so huge. I think like short film as a medium can sometimes feel like a bit of a forgotten thing and a bit of a solitary thing to be making short films. So, you know, going to festivals is one thing and that's fantastic, but having a dedicated kind of short film awards where the community, as it were, can come together and kind of celebrate one another and just champion it. And I don't know, I feel like of all of the kind of award things, it has such a good energy. There's such a good vibe in there. Nobody's sort of, there's not a competitive kind of nature. It's just a complete kind of love for the fact that we're all there celebrating shorts. So, yeah, it's a really great thing to have for the industry. And considering it is so new, 3 years,
But it's been going the same amount of years as we've been making films, so we've been kind of like in tandem, growing with the British Short Film Awards. So it's there's a lovely sort of roundness to that, and it was really nice to, as Ross says, like these people that you do start seeing on a more regular basis at festivals and these kinds of things, and building up friends and sort of contacts amongst your peers. It's so nice to kind of get together with these people at something that is dedicated for this medium.
As you said, it's been going as long as you have. The Golden West. It's such a beautiful film. How do you view it as your third film? Do you look at it, and when you compare it to your previous work, it does genuinely feel like you have advanced as filmmakers in terms of what you are putting on screen?
Yeah, I think if you compare it to our first film, which was called Roy, which was it was all essentially shot in one room with one actor, and the Golden West is in the mountains of North Wales in winter with donkeys and guns and like it's a Celtic Western really, and so I suppose they couldn't be more different. But that was our goal setting out. When we decided to start filmmaking together, we set ourselves a task of doing 3 shorts in 3 years, and the idea was that they would scale up in terms of like their scope and ambition. And we didn't go to film school, so again they were also trying to act as a sort of de facto film school for us. And so the Golden West was supposed to be the kind of culmination of what we'd learned so far, and then what we still wanted to kind of challenge ourselves with. And so shooting on film was a big part of that. Just I suppose the kind of the ambition that the story sort of required in terms of like the genre space that it's in, the sort of the general sort of setting and the sort of plotting of the characters and everything like that, is, as well as kind of got I suppose a bit of a scope to it, trying to push at the walls of what the short film kind of medium can be. And I think we just see it as our opportunity to be learning, and it's our kind of like playground. And so I think it's I think it definitely challenged us in a great way.
I think I was going to ask this later, but you're touching on it now, and you mentioned this to me at the British Short Film Awards. Neither of you went to film school. You have learnt filmmaking through making short films. Just talk me through the mindset of that, because I'm sure there are people listening who go, I don't like my job. I want to stop becoming a filmmaker. I never went to film school. What is that like, actually learning on the job? How much research did you do before? How difficult was the process of learning the craft of filmmaking by making film?
Yeah, I think, I think, for us, starting out, it was our first time ever behind camera. We came to it from a love of film and a love of story, and like so many people do, and I think I remember in the run up to Roy, our first ever time behind the camera, we just did so much sort of cramming, for lack of a better word, like trying to read up as much as possible, watch like YouTube videos and stuff. Like there's so much great resource out there. But to be quite honest, like I think as a director or a writer or producer, your key role is to know your story that you're telling, find out how to get the best people around you to support you in a technical sense. Because I think for us, that was the side that terrified us at the start. We didn't know the difference between lenses and cameras and lighting setups, and we felt a bit of that kind of imposter syndrome, I suppose. And I think you quickly have to shake that off and just say, I know what I don't know. I know what I do know, and I will sort of try and fill those gaps in knowledge with great people around me and great collaborators. And that doesn't mean you need to be working with the top of the game. Like there's so many people wanting to do this work who, we've had a real sort of pleasure in the shorts to work with really great pros and great artists who maybe do a lot of music video, a lot of commercial work, and are just desperate to get like more involved in like narrative storytelling as well. And you actually find that, I don't know, if you can sort of communicate your passion, the reason you're making that film, and people can back it, they'll come on and they'll work for, let's be honest, not much money, but, because they just back it. They want to be involved in telling that story. So I think for us, it was just ripping off the kind of, because when we started out, we were just going to be writers. We wanted to find directors to direct our shorts. That was the kind of goal. And then we just couldn't really get anybody to direct the scripts because we were sort of nobodies at the time. And when we wrote Roy, the first short, it was so kind of pared back and simple that we said, well, let's try it. Let's give it a go and see how we feel. And, it's an addictive kind of pain directing films. It's sort of, we did it and it was so stressful for a weekend, but then we turned to each other and said, we've got to keep doing this. So, yeah, I think that was really it. Just that kind of diving in and finding the people to surround yourself with who can support.
So you've mentioned Roy. We touched on the phenomenal The Golden West. Let's talk An Irish Goodbye. 2022, the British Short Film Awards. You pick up Best Film, and then other things happen after that. Just talk me through exactly what that journey was after winning Best Film at the British Short Film Awards. Then what happened?
No, we were very, very, very fortunate to ultimately win the best live action short at the Academy Awards and best British short at the BAFTAs, and then we also won best short film at the Irish Academy Awards as well. So we were the most sort of surprised and bowled over by that as it was happening. Our expectations, for the film going into it, as again, in short film particularly, you do not expect to be anywhere near the BAFTAs or the Oscars. As I said right at the start, it was a learning exercise for us to get better at our craft and hopefully introduce the film to some people who hopefully might like our work. And then it kind of just snowballed in a way that we really didn't expect and took on a real life of its own. And various planets aligned. It was An Irish Goodbye was the first thing that we wrote together when we started writing, and as Ross kind of alluded to, in the early stages, it was quite difficult to get the funding together for it. So that's why then we kind of took a step to make Roy, which was slightly more contained. Maybe we could do it off our own backs, and I'm really glad that we did that, and we didn't rush into trying to do An Irish Goodbye without the resource that it necessarily needed, because there is a bit of scope to that story. And ultimately, when we got to direct it and make it, we felt kind of ready to sort of meet that head on, and we were really proud of it. We were really just sort of felt very content about it. Put it out on the film festival circuit, and then it was on the circuit for the best part of like 12 or 14 months until the Oscars like shortlist and the BAFTA shortlist and things came out. So it was a massive part of our lives for about 3 years or something like that, and then it had this incredible final chapter to its story, which was just the most fun, and we felt very fortunate to have had that experience.
I'm gonna mention this fact. It's an incredible fact. I love this fact. You are the youngest British filmmakers ever to win an Oscar. Talk me through that night, because I've watched repeatedly in preparation. I've done my due diligence. The video of you guys hearing your name announced standing up at the Academy Awards to walk to the stage, and you look as cool as cucumbers. You look very, very relaxed.
It did not feel that way inside at all. I watched it back as well, and I can't believe how calm we looked, because I just remember having a complete screaming fit inside. It was just so surreal. But to be honest, the whole day was surreal, and the whole kind of run up, the months up to. So it kind of just felt like, you were kind of running on air, and it was just like in the clouds. But the actual day, I just remember pulling up, to the Oscars, walking through. And I guess the charm of the whole thing for us was, it was myself and Tom with our production company and the two lead actors of our film, just as like a little band of brothers, like the four of us as mates, basically, at this crazy thing that we'd watched our whole lives. And there wasn't like a big studio or a big like organization behind us. It was just us. So it felt very sort of befitting that the film came out of that, and then we were there as that. But then you're on the red carpet, or the champagne colored carpet as it was this year, and it's just like, who's who of Hollywood. You're just like spotting all these people, and I guess sometimes the nerves come over you a little bit, and you're sort of a bit reserved or taken aback. And then James Martin, our fantastic star of our film, has no nerves at all. He's like cool as a cucumber. So he was just like running up to celebrities. We'd just be like, me and Tom would be chatting about something, we'd spin around, and James would be like hugging the rock. And then it was just like, So I don't know, I feel like we very quickly just said, this is, let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy the day. Like, we weren't kind of thinking about winning or anything at that point. I guess, it's very rare to even be in that room. So you've just got to say, let's take it all in, try and, take those little mental photographs as much as possible. And then the other kind of added bonus was that it was actually James Martin's birthday, the day of the Oscars. So our star of the short, was his birthday, which I think took the pressure off a little bit again, because it was sort of, the Oscars became the second most important thing of the day. It was James's birthday first, and it was just the most ridiculous birthday party anybody's ever had.
It's such an achievement. It's so great, and I've interviewed more recently than I can remember quite a lot of writing and directing partnerships. You look at the landscape right now. You've got obviously the Russo brothers, the Filippo brothers, who just did the wonderful Talk to Me this year. How important is it for you guys to have each other when it comes to creating a film, from like a blank screen on a laptop to a finished product?
Yeah, I mean, it's all we know, really. I mean, like, even before we went into filmmaking, Ross and I, we met when we were 18, so that's 10 years ago now, and we were collaborating from the get go. We set up and ran a theatre company together for about 4 years, and then we were writing together a lot before we kind of then became writers and directors as a collaboration. And so we've sort of always been in each other's pockets, and going back to that crazy period of time with the Oscars and the all of that madness, like the thought of going through that on my own without the kind of other half, as it were, would feel very strange and very lonely. And I think it's great to have a collaborator at all stages. When we're writing, filmmaking's collaborative medium. It kind of establishes the sort of the ethos of collaboration from the get-go, and that's lovely, and it gets you out of your own head, and it makes you kind of think about your ideas and justify your ideas. But then also at the other end of the spectrum, when you are there on the champagne colored carpet and stuff like that, you've got your best mate of 10 years with you as well, and it kind of it makes everything feel a little bit more normal. And it's just a lot more fun to go through those crazy experiences with somebody else as well. So yeah.
Ross, how do you feel? It seems wrong to just hear Tom's side of things.
I
Just
know,
in case you go, lovely. I feel entirely differently.
I don't think I've heard Tom be so lovely and soppy in such a long time. That was great. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's exactly it. I think it is just such an intense process making a film, and that for us has been making short films. So the leap into features is gonna multiply that. But it is when you put your kind of all into something, it is a very intense thing to go through. So to have a kind of a friend, a kind of person beside you throughout that, a kind of champion with you. We always joke about, as a duo, whenever we face these moments of crisis, when things are going wrong on set, sort of it's one of our jobs when the other one is at a low point and kind of thinking this is a total disaster. The other one has to sort of maintain a total veneer of coolness and like pretend that everything's fine, even if inside you're also thinking this is a disaster. So I think we have that for each other, and you have that kind of support for one another in what is a complete roller coaster of an industry and of a job where you go from these complete difficult problems that you're facing on set one week to then you're at a festival a month later or whatever, and you're celebrating a great sort of showing, or it's just so good to have your mate with you during that for sure.
Just before we head to our virtual cinema, I want to ask you your experience of watching an Irish goodbye with an audience. I'm not sure how often that has happened. I'd never experienced it before. At the Film Awards just last week, it was screened for an audience, and seeing the reaction, hearing the laughter at the jokes, hearing the silence at the moments of drama. What is that like for you as filmmakers? Is that something you've experienced a lot with your work?
We've been fortunate, yeah, to especially with an Irish Goodbye to sort of see it. One of the best things of the whole experience with the awards was that we managed to do like a short sort of theatrical release of the film, or a theatrical tour, I guess, around the UK and Ireland, and I think that felt really important for us because filmmakers are always going to say you've got to see my movie in the cinema. That's but for this film particularly, it really feels like it benefits from that communal experience in a way that I would say amongst our shorts it by far away the most. And I think that having that kind of communal experience, especially when it's a comedy or a kind of dramedy, I guess, or a black comedy, whatever you want to call it, having those moments, as you say, where we can just indulge in those moments of joy and laughter with an audience, and then also feel the turns and the kind of sharp spins in those dramatic moments. So it's been a real blessing for us, and what's been interesting is watching it go around the world a bit as well, internationally, with theatrical audiences in a cinema, because some of the more specific maybe Irish jokes, Northern Irish jokes that you can get in the UK and in Ireland, maybe then you go to America and there's just like different kind of laugh here and a different laugh there. But it's amazed us how well it kind of has travelled, and audiences have really sort of taken to it. But yeah, for sure the cinema experience with it feels like the best way.
The line at the end of the film where which is something along the lines of the English are no crack at all, and that line gets a laugh everywhere. to a sort of
people come up to Tom and they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I laughed the most at that line." But I do think you wrote that line, which is great self-awareness stuff.
But yes, I was. Maybe we should have done like a kind of laugh-ometer, like the different countries that's played. That who thinks the English are the least crack of all, based on the laugh that line gets. But yeah, that one.
One final thing. Obviously, the Golden West. It's about to. It is on the festival circuit now. It's a wonderful film. How are people going to be able to see it in the future? Because I can't wait for people to experience your final shorts before your debut feature.
Yeah, well, we're still fairly early in the sort of festival circuit for the short, and it's got a lovely sort of run up of places that it's going, and if people want to kind of follow the journey of the film from now, it's across all the socials as kind of the Golden West film, and on our personal ones as well. And so if it happens to be going to a festival near anybody, it's one of those that it would be great if people could see it on the big screen. We'd love ultimately for it to find a kind of a home, potentially with a streamer, but then also to potentially do a little theatrical release if we can do. There used to be the sort of tradition of shorts playing before features in the theaters, and that's something that we're sort of trying to think of ways that we might be able to bring back. So we'd love all of our films to have a nice afterlife after their festival circuit, so people can kind of keep seeing them for years to come. So we're very much keeping that on the radar and trying to find the ways that it's going to be able to see the world over.
I truly hope people do get to see it on the big screen because it's so cinematic. Visually, it's incredible. It's such a wonderful film, and it deserves to be seen on the big screen, and that is the Golden West. Good luck with that on the festival circuit, gentlemen. Now, as we're talking about the big screen, it's time to begin our journey. We are leaving this reality to head to a dimension of pure film where our virtual cinema awaits. You are our guides. We are your audience. Let's go on a trip to the movies. So, we push open the doors to our temple of film and find ourselves in the foyer. There's an excited buzz, as there always is in a cinema foyer, the hum of anticipation. It is your perfect cinema trip, guys. Who have you picked, living or dead, to go with you? Ross.
I've picked Martin Scorsese. I just felt like it was a very obvious answer, but I just thought I want that guy and his encyclopedic knowledge of film, and I want to hear what he thinks, and I just feel like he'd have a good little giggle as well beside me if it was a comedy.
Martin Scorsese is a busy man in our virtual cinema because he is often visiting with various guests. And what was your entry level to the legend that is Martin Scorsese?
That's a really great question. I think it was Goodfellas. I think Goodfellas was the first thing I saw, and it was like the first one of the first times of being just so like hit over the head with the filmmaker's kind of aesthetic and the filmmaker's artistry. And I don't know, we speak about this a lot. Growing up, I think you look at the actors as the storytellers, as the kind of the center, because they're the visible thing. But I think when you watch the great auteurs and the great cinema makers, you see and you feel their hand and their fingerprints all over it. And I think watching Goodfellas for the first time, that I remember that moment where at the end of the film when Henry Hill turns to the camera and does the direct address. I was like, what's going on? It was just unbelievable. It took me aback. So yeah, I want to speak to Marty about all of that, and it's
you calling him Marty now, you Ross?
Well, when we go to the cinema together, he tells me not to call him Mr. Scorsese.
So are you saying that since you've become a filmmaker yourself and understanding the elements that go into directing a scene, from sound, from lighting, from all of that, you've begun to appreciate what is involved in what he does?
Yeah, it's just elevating at that next level where it's like it's not just there's kind of well told story is one thing, but then it's also to have your own distinct view of the world and your own kind of fingerprints to put on something, and your own style that is so. And you look at the films he's done, from Goodfellas to Silence, but you still know it's a Martin Scorsese film. There's such a distinct voice throughout that. I just saw Killers of the Flower Moon 2 nights ago in the cinema, and it was just such a joy to like sit and let just a great story wash over you. And it feels like, I think I read something, he said like he feels like he's directing novels as much as he's directing films, and I really get that feeling with his films. They're almost not just one story, they're 10 stories in one. They're absolute epics. So yeah, that's what really impresses me with his work.
I love it. We've got Martin Scorsese. Tom, who's joining you in our virtual cinema?
Yeah, in a very similar vein, I would be taking Quentin Tarantino. Of the sort of encyclopedic cinema brain there, I think would be just a fun person. If a bit daunting, actually, a bit overwhelming to have that presence there. But I think, yeah, just on the basis of the stories and the knowledge, I think he'd be good fun in the cinema.
So Goodfellas was Ross's introduction to Marty. What am I doing? Marty. So what was your introduction to the legend Quentin Tarantino?
It's probably Inglourious Bastards, but I'm trying to think if I'd seen. I had a brother who was very, very into film, of a kind of in a sort of 2-year gap when he was about 17, and sort of I would have been about 10 at the time, and he was showing me, lots of sort of, for that age, inappropriate things. And I have a feeling that we would have watched Reservoir Dogs together at around about that time. But I think like of an age to fully sit down and sort of appreciate, it would have been Inglourious Bastards, and that opening scene from there where Christoph Waltz in his absolute element, and I think one of the surely the best openings to of movie ever written. And I think like that really captured the sort of the writer in me and the director in me and the one-time actor in me and all of it. And I from there was kind of hooked, and we both are really. You know, we're going to have very similar. I just feel like we're going to have very similar answers to this because we have such a shared sensibility about all of this stuff. But maybe we should all go as a 4.
This is interesting. So I'm going to ask this now. Do you know what each other have answered for each question, or is this going to be an interesting journey?
This is total surprise. Yeah. I wonder are there any double ups? Well, yeah, we'll find out. I was thinking that when I was answering it, if we will have any similar.
Yeah, I don't want to pick the same.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, there is a clock on the wall in the foyer. It reads a specific time. What time of day have we gone to the cinema, Tom?
Yeah, I said 7:30 in the evening. On the proviso that there isn't any football on, because it's also a key sort of football time, and that would just be a distraction more than anything. I suppose it also depends on the length of the film. If we were going to do a big Killers of the Flower Moon epic, maybe you'd have to knock it a little bit earlier. But I think you want it to be dark outside before you get into the cinema as well. Like, I think that's the sort of the sense of occasion of it all. It feels odd to be going at the at the crack of dawn. So I've gone for 7:30.
Okay, 7:30. Interesting that you mentioned Killers of the Flower Moon. There's been a lot of discussion about the idea of returning to the intermission because as it is, it's over 3 hours long. For your first feature, are you going to just let loose? Obviously, you've worked within the confines of the short film, although I will say all of your short films do follow the very distinct 3-act structure, especially the recent 2. What is your plan for your feature? I'm not sure how much you can talk about it, how much you want to talk about it, because I believe you're still at the writing stage, but is it going to push, I don't know, 4 hours?
Yeah, we should do like a 7-hour epic, like 2 intervals. No, I think it'll be closer to the typical 1:45, 2-hour kind of mark. We're still in the writing process at the moment, and kind of cooking away, but it's really been lovely to be back in that space, you know, from having made shorts. The thing we're writing at the minute, to give you a little bit on, is a sort of, I guess, a cabin fever kind of story that is a bit of like a psychological thriller meets a dark comedy. So we're writing in a kind of early draft of that at the moment. We're hoping to sort of finish in the next few months.
Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting. Cabin fever. I think the minute you mentioned those 2 words, everyone goes, the razor leg scene. The razor leg scene. It's an unforgettable moment.
Yes. Yeah. For sure.
Fantastic. I think there's going to be a lot of people who've seen your work who are very excited about your debut feature. So we're going 7:30, Tom. Ross, here's our first.
Not too dissimilar, yeah. I'm going for an 8 p.m. on the proviso. I need that extra half an hour because me and Marty have been eating some spaghetti, I don't know, down at the Italian restaurant. We're getting some dinner together first. Yeah, I think I agree with all what Tom said. A nice evening screening, you know, 8 p.m. for me.
This is great.
And also getting there on time to see the trailers. I like that. I'm not sort of like, well, you know, if it starts at 8, we'll get there at 8:30 because the movie. I like to be there to see the trailers.
Trailers is part of the experience. I'm sorry.
Does anybody else play the trailer game? Do you ever play I love the trailer game where adverts and trailers, as soon as they come up, whoever you're with, you've got to guess what the advert's for or guess what the trailer's for, and you keep score. That's something I've done for 10 years, and I just love it. Yeah, it's a part of the cinema going experience.
I've never heard of this game. I already love this game because the first time, because of the nature of the job, I often see press screenings. So the first movie I saw for a long time at the cinema was Barbie, and it was a wonderful experience. The cinema was packed. I hadn't seen a full auditorium for quite some time, but I was surprised by almost 40 minutes of adverts, and had I known that game, it would have made it far more interesting.
You can take that one for future then, for sure.
Right then, this is very convenient for Quentin and Marty because we're going roughly at the same time. We've got half an hour. I'm just going to say 8 o'clock for both. Is that all right, Tom?
That's fine. Let's do that.
All right, good stuff. So you, gentlemen, have booked the tickets for this trip. Where in the auditorium are we going to be sitting? Ross?
I mean, I said that, you know, I think me and Marty are going to be in the recline seats, just kicking it back and getting comfy.
Great. Love that.
What about you, Tom?
Well, I've said wherever Quentin wants to sit, just purely because he's a cinema man. He's a cinema buff. It's his, it's his religion, and that's his church. And I feel like it would be wrong to tell him where to sit. And I feel like I'd just be interested. I hope he's not a front row kind of man, because I don't think I've got the neck for it now. Like, just the kind of craning up for that. But also, my parents love sitting right at the back. I think because I don't know, they're just like quite reclusive in their sort of natures. They like being as sort of far away from people. And unless the screen's massive, sometimes that you might as well be at home. Do you know what I mean? So I think at least halfway down.
So, Ross, you don't mind where, as long as it's a recliner and Marty's happy. Tom, you're going to leave it to Quentin. I'm going to assume, and this is a huge assumption, until he comes on the show and tells me otherwise, Quentin is going to sit in the middle row, in the middle seat, because apparently, having spoken to filmmakers, that is, I'm sure you know, the ideal place for sound and vision. It's where sound engineers dictate, if you want the perfect sound, you sit in those seats.
This is what I'm talking about. This is what he'll know, for sure.
Yeah. Right, we're leaving it to them, but I'm going to put you in the middle of the middle right now. So the final thing we need from the foyer before we start our journey. Oh, the air is full of wonderful smells. All manner of snacks and foodstuffs are available at the various counters. What are you choosing to eat, Tom?
So like growing up as a kid, I was not allowed to eat anything in the cinema. My mum was very much, and she would usually be taking me, was very much against popcorn and sweets, and didn't like people ruining the ambience of the films with their sort of sounds of eating, and that's kind of really rubbed off on me now. So I don't tend to eat. So I won't actually be having anything. I'll be going hungry.
And I would like to apologise to Tom's mum, because I'm going to be the complete opposite and just be getting the largest sweet popcorn I can find. Me and Marty are going to be dipping in, chomping away. I think it's part of the whole experience. I love a big thing of Coca-Cola and some popcorn, but I've got a big sweet tooth, as you know.
You're the kind of person that we would have just rolled our eyes at and tutted at. I think it's all about you.
Okay, so Ross is taking a large sweet popcorn and a Coca-Cola. Tom, I'm going to ask only once, and you can stick to your guns. But this is your perfect cinema trip. You can go rogue. You can go wild if you want to break that rule.
Yeah, there's a part of me that feels like I should just, on Rebellion, get like a bit of everything and go absolutely massive and gorge. But then I just think that there is something about the sanctity of not having those things. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to say I'm not having anything to eat.
I love it. I love it. To quote Gene Wilder from Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory, nothing. You get nothing. Right. Let's leave the foyer. We push open the doors to the corridor that leads to the auditorium. Now, the corridor is looking a little bare at the moment, so I want to put up some posters that depict your most important movie memories. And the first poster I'm putting up depicts your fondest movie memory. What is your fondest movie memory, Ross?
I really vividly remember going to see the second Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, with my dad and my sister, and just leaving that screening being so blown away, and literally in the corridors of the cinema, like running around, like pretending to play swords with my sister. My cousin was there as well, and then on the car ride home, just us arguing the whole time about who would be Legolas, who would be Aragorn, who would be Gimli. I think Dad got Gimli in the end, so it was such a formative kind of film to see together.
Dad got Gimli sounds about right. I mean, I love Gimli, but no one wants to be Gimli. Everyone wants to be Legolas.
Yeah, that was the argument over me and my sister. I think she had long blonde hair, so she won. She got to be Legolas, and I think I was a miscast Aragorn. Probably more of a Frodo, to be honest, but yeah.
So my big Lord of the Rings question is, two battles, I think, define that series, and I'm a huge action junkie, so I love the action that Peter Jackson directs. What is your vote for the greatest battle, Helm's Deep or the battle for Minas Tirith in Return of the King?
I think on the basis of this experience, it's gotta be Helm's Deep. I just think I've never seen anything like it, and I saw it so young and it really stuck with. Because I think when the first Lord of the Rings came out, I didn't see it at the cinema. We saw it on home release, and we got that really bad surround sound at the time. But my dad was so impressed with it that we were like bringing neighbours round to hear it and stuff. So then when the second one came out, we were like the first in line to see the movie, and watching that battle. I mean, there's that great quote from the cinematographer because it's so beautifully lit and it's really, you get a lot now when they say about nighttime battles and stuff, it's really hard to see what's actually going on these days. And they say that is so beautifully visible and they've got like that blue moonlight. And somebody asked him, but where does this light actually come from? Like, what's the justification in the movie? And he says the light comes from the exact same place as the music comes from. And I thought that was just a perfect, it's a brilliant, brilliant quote.
I did not know that quote. That is such a wonderful quote.
That's for all DPs out there. If you ever get questioned as to where the light's coming from, you can just say the same place as the music.
I love it. Right, Tom, let's put up a poster for your fondest movie memory. We've got Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers on one side. What am I putting on the other side of the corridor?
Yeah, it's not a particularly sort of highbrow thing, but it's my sort of strongest memory of like the power of cinema as a kid. I was actually going to see Alex Rider's Stormbreaker, which came out in 2004, so I would have been 8. And I have a very sort of strong core memory of leaving the cinema fully convinced that I was a secret agent. And I remember just like, sort of strutting out and then looking as we were leaving, like looking around in the foyer, thinking about like how I would, do my, like he in that film, he does like a kind of escape thing on like a BMX bike. I thought it was the sort of coolest thing at the time. And, it's going to be weird to have Lord of the Rings poster up next to Alex Rider's Stormbreaker. But for me, it was a seminal moment.
I love it. I love the fact that on one side we have Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, on the other side Alex Rider's Stormbreaker. But there is a thing about seeing a film as a child, isn't there? And the difference that watching a film has as an adult. Do you miss? It's a weird question, but do you miss that pure escapism? Because film still offers you a way away from reality. But like watching a movie as a kid and just losing yourself completely in it and almost believing it as another reality. Has that changed a lot for you?
Yeah, I was thinking about this yesterday, and I suppose when you're working on the other side and you're making films and the sort of you're seeing the kind of the cogs whirring and everything behind it. It both sort of demystifies and takes that away, but also kind of reignites it in a different way. And I suppose like we're always trying to get back to that place of like awe and childlike sort of wonderment when we're going to the cinemas. And I feel like it's our job as filmmakers to put people of all ages into that frame of mind.
Right, gentlemen, we carry on down the corridor. The second poster I'm putting up depicts your worst movie memory. I'll start with you, Tom.
I really didn't like, and probably still don't like, horror films, but particularly as a kid. Again, I think it was probably that having too much imagination, kind of making them feel too real. And I remember for some reason watching Paranormal Activity with some friends, and I knew I wasn't going to like it from the start. And I watched the entire thing with my eyes closed, which is a long time to be sat with your eyes closed but fully awake, like just willing that I might fall asleep or something like that. But I fully just sat there with my eyes closed for the whole thing, slightly leaning back so that my friends couldn't see that I wasn't like watching the film. But then you're just hearing everything happening, which is kind of creepier in a sense. But anyway, I've never watched it since, and I will never in the future.
So, do you think that maybe, to go back to your previous answer, if you were to make a horror movie, it might show the whirring of the cogs and allow you to then enjoy horror and not be quite so scared by it?
I think it would be a brilliant irony, I suppose, if we did make one, and I loved it, and it was the thing that unlocked it for me, and then I could watch Paranormal Activity like with sort of glee. But I suppose in the film we're writing at the moment, there's a few elements of horror in there, but it's more on the psychological, it's the paranormal stuff, and I don't know, it just really, it kind of gets me in a weird way.
I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed of. I think Paranormal Activity is absolutely petrifying. I watched it on my own in a screening room. No one else was in there, just me in a screening room in the dark with that movie. I was horrifying. 2007's Paranormal Activity is the first poster we're putting up. Over to you, Ross. What's your worst movie memory?
This is not the fault of the movie itself, but I went on my first ever date with a girl from my class to see Nanny McPhee, of all movies. And I was really young. It must have been like 9 or 10, and we went on this little date, and the romance was short-lived. So I'm gonna put up the poster for Nanny McPhee.
Why was it short-lived? You're saying it's not the movie?
Because you took her to see Nanny McPhee. That's why.
I think it's because I took her to see Nanny McPhee. Yeah, it wasn't the most romantic of choices. Yeah, but yeah, so that's my poster that's going up.
Oh, the cinema date. Do we agree with it? This idea of going on a date to the cinema. I went to see a movie, and there were a couple on their first date, and they talked all the way through. And
it's not a first date place. It's like, if you've been with somebody for a long time, it's a nice thing to do. But I agree, because you can't be whispering and chatting for sure.
It's maybe a nice one for like people who are friends who, maybe have always had the potential to move into, and there's a bit of like, bit of hand holding, bit of, that kind of thing. But if you're there on a full first date and you want to get to know somebody, take that out of the cinema, please.
That was really good advice, Tom. If you're friends who think there may be a spark, but you're not sure, the cinema is the place to perhaps realise there's more to this friendship.
And that's what's going to happen with me and Quentin. And his wandering hands.
All right, our next poster we're putting up depicts the last performance that brought you to tears. Ross.
I'm such a sucker for this movie, so one of the things that really just get me every time. So I probably the last film I watched, but I'm going to go for one that really got me quite heavily, which was Marriage Story. When I saw it, I just remember the music, Randy Newman's score, and that film just was so beautiful. So I'll say Marriage Story for me. Noah Baumbach.
That scene between Adam Driver and it's Natalie Portman, isn't it?
Scarlett Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson, sorry. Yeah. That scene where they have the blazing row feels to me like the most real argument I've ever seen equated to film.
It's so well written. Have you ever seen those script to screen videos where it shows you it on the page and the actual film? It's just remarkable how he writes that way, and all of his other films. It is so. I also love the Meyerowitz Stories is one of my favorite films that he made. It's just brilliant, and he just really captures that family dynamic and the arguments and the messiness and an argument that breaks into a joke a minute later. Yeah, he's a master.
Squid and the Whale as well is brilliant for that as well. He's a master at capturing that.
For you as filmmakers, when you've obviously written your script, what's it like watching an actor bring those words to life on camera?
Yeah, it's amazing, really. I mean, way back when, Ross and I, we met at drama school, trained to be actors, and so we've got a kind of deep, affinity and love for actors and what they're able to do. And I think we've both had memories of when we've done that well as actors, and also when we were really sort of struggled. And so anybody who kind of takes the words and makes them their own, it's like, I suppose that's the job, but it's always like a lovely moment to see. I think it's the first moment where you kind of see it living and breathing in front of you, and you kind of know whether or not it's gonna be okay. And we're very lucky. We've had amazing actors on everything we've done. So
yeah.
Right. Tom, what poster are you putting up for the last performance that brought you to tears?
Well, we were very lucky to see this in Telluride Film Festival, which we were at in September, which is where Golden West had its international premiere, and its Paul Giamatti in The Holdovers.
Mm. Mm.
And I actually thought, Ross, I thought you might choose this one as well. So I think it's good that we managed to pick different ones, because I'm sure we both had like a similar reaction to it. But he is just, it was perfect casting. Have you been able to see it yet, Alex?
I haven't seen The Holdovers, so give us it's Alexander Payne's latest movie, isn't it? Give us a very brief overview.
So he plays Paul Giamatti plays a kind of embittered kind of professor at a prep school in New England, and it's the Christmas holidays, and he is tasked with looking after the sort of 4 or 5 kids that can't get home for Christmas, which ultimately ends up just being one kid that can't get home for Christmas. And it's a kind of father-son, they very much don't see eye to eye to begin with, and they have to spend the holidays together. And Paul Giamatti plays, he's kind of, he's a brilliant teacher, and he's very much like by the book, and is a very kind of impressive professor, but he doesn't take care of himself, and he has an incredibly like low self-confidence, and doesn't have a kind of romantic partner in his life, and is a sad sort of reclusive man, and he plays that part. It's kind of very similar to sort of Sideways, his part in Sideways. I was going to say,
yeah.
And he just plays it so wonderfully, and where it ends up, the kind of journey that these two go on together, I think it's both the kind of paternal arc of that film, but also his personal character's arc of finding his confidence. I think it's just something very, very sad about seeing him in the way that he is at the start of that film, but he kind of takes you through that so brilliantly. And I imagine most people will have a similar response when they get to see it.
Wonderful. I can't wait. I mean, what a CV of films that man has. Election, About Schmidt. It sounds wonderful. Looking forward to it. Right. The final poster we're putting up depicts your unpopular movie opinion, Ross.
I don't even know if this is unpopular enough, but I'm going to say that my unpopular movie opinion is that Finding Nemo was one of the greatest screenplays ever written. Like, we're talking top 5 of all time. So that's my popular sort of positive opinion, because I just think...
Pop out answer that, Ross.
It's a nice answer. There's a bit of a cop out. It is... I just couldn't think of one that was me. But I just think that film, the script for that is one of the best scripts of all time. So that's my unpopular movie.
Okay, I mean, Tom already called it. I've started giving unpopular movie opinions a rating between 1 and 5. 1 being that's not very good. 5 being that's absolutely brilliant. That's a 1. It's a cop-out answer, but I'm letting you have it. Tell me why it's one of the greatest screenplays ever written.
It is. I saw it as a kid like 10 times in the cinema, because there was so many birthday parties and they all went to see Finding Nemo, and I loved it. And then I returned to it, recently, just to read the screenplay, and I just think it is the perfect metaphor so clearly of parenthood. And I'm not a parent myself yet, but I imagine when I am, I'll return to it again and feel even deeper about it. But I just think it is. Every moment is just glorious. There's not a wasted moment in that film. It's so economical, and like most of the early Pixar stuff, it is just story science to 100%. It's just so beautifully done and accomplished. So yeah, that's and it is a 1. It is a 1. I hold my hands up. That is a terrible
0.5.
Or you hope you're going to say something extra scathing now, Tom, to sort of make up for us.
Well, I don't think I'll rank massively highly, but it's I'm answering at least in the spirit of the question that's being asked, which is that a film that Ross really likes is Step Brothers, and I have to say I've never found it funny. That's my unpopular movie opinion.
This is Adam McKay's 2008 Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly comedy Step Brothers. A lot of people's favorite film. This is good, Tom. This is.
I love everybody involved in that project. I think.
Hey, look at he's backtracking now. He's backtracking.
The ingredients are all great. I think what it is when you miss. I didn't see it when it came out, and I kind of missed the sort of like. I think you need to get on board that film in the right way, and then I was kind of going back watching it with the sort of cynicism of like. the early 20s adult kind of, the childish whatever. It just never. But I like similar films, so yeah, it's. But that's mine, and I'll stand by it.
Okay, Ross. I didn't realise that there was such a rift between you in terms of a film. How do you feel about Tom not liking Step Brothers in the way you do?
This might change everything.
Ross, what's the funniest bit in Step Brothers?
The funny, mate, where would I even begin? I mean, the sleepwalking sequence is just comedy gold. It's comedy gold. I know, you're right. You had to be there when you were 13 years old to watch that film and just be like, this is the funniest thing ever made.
Yeah, I think I missed that. I missed that when I was 13. Yeah.
I'm probably going to leave it there because I don't want to see this escalate into never getting to watch your debut feature. Right. We're putting up posters for Step Brothers because it is not funny, Tom. And Ross, we're putting up a poster for Finding Nemo because it's great.
So unpopular, Ross. Daring.
We've reached the final set of doors, gentlemen. Now, there is a queue of people hoping to join you in the auditorium alongside Martin Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino. Do you want to let them in? Do you want a busy screening, or do you want it just the four of you?
Oh, bring them all, as busy as possible. It's a communal experience.
Great, 100%.
Great stuff. The crowd go wild. We push open the doors. They pour into the auditorium. Now, there are a few things we're going to play on the big screen before we get to the movies. You have picked a screen for us tonight. And the first thing we're going to play on the big screen are the trailers for the movies you are most looking forward to seeing at the cinema. Ross, what are you most looking forward to seeing at the cinema?
I'm going to go for Napoleon. I think that looks like a lot of fun. Looks like a great one to see in the. Have you seen it yet, Alex?
I have not. I'm trying to stay away from reviews, but I can't help myself because I'm so eager to see it. Ridley Scott, historical epic. It's like, you've got Gladiator, you've got not the theatrical cut, but the director's cut of Kingdom of Heaven, which is phenomenal. Excited. Why are you excited?
I feel like there's just those movies that have got to be seen in the cinema. And I actually think that one, one of the things with COVID and stuff was like people like my dad doesn't go to the cinema a lot anymore. He used to quite a lot and now he's sort of stopped. So that's a great film where I'm going to bring him to see it because I know he'll love it. And I feel like it might reignite a love of cinema for him. So that'll be a good one to see with him.
Wonderful. So that's one for Ridley Scott's Napoleon. I think we have one of our jinx moments here, Tom.
We have a close jinx moment. I've actually gone for Gladiator 2. So
another Ridley Scott historical epic.
Another Ridley Scott historical epic. I don't know how old me and Ross would have been when the first Gladiator came out, but I think that it's gonna hit the same levels of a sort of cinematic experience. So it'll be nice to be of an age to fully appreciate that on the big screen.
So you loved the first Gladiator, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah.
I love the little bit of press that came out about Gladiator 2, where apparently Paul Mescal. So for those who don't know, it follows the story of Paul Mescal, who was the Emperor's nephew in the first film, a child in the first film, and now an adult. In the first movie, Ridley Scott wanted Russell Crowe to fight a rhino. It never saw the light of day.
I think, is that coming into this Gladiator 2?
Almost. Apparently, Paul Mescal fights some killer baboons.
I love that. Ridley Scott just knows what he wants, and he's just not taking no for an answer. That is
a killer baboon's different to. They're more friendly. Like baboons, are they?
I'll be honest. I had a killer, but they're just baboons.
Okay, they're baboons. Yeah,
but they want to kill him.
Good luck to him.
Yeah, angry baboons.
How excited are you guys to, in your filmmaking careers, reach 80 years old, like Ridley Scott is, I think, or somewhere like that. I'm not sure exactly, but he's around 55. To reach Ridley Scott's age and just go, fuck it. I want killer baboons. I want like to just have that amount of power and still be delivering amazing films, not to have gone off the rails, but to be able to say, I know what I want and I want to make that. How exciting would that be for you guys at the start of your careers?
It takes a special kind of like master to make Killer Baboons work, and I just know it's going to work. So yeah, that excites me. If we can ever get good enough to make Killer Baboons work, then we've done something right.
I feel you've taken the Killer Baboons thing and run with it.
I think they should retitle the film Gladiator 2: The Return of the Killer Baboons.
Good. That's on me. That's on me, gentlemen. Right then, the next moment we're going to play on the big screen as we warm up for the main feature is the movie moment that makes you literally or metaphorically pump your fist in the air. Tom.
Okay, so I loved the film The Pursuit of Happiness as a kid. Again, it's not the most highbrow choice. None of mine are. But the moment at the end of that film where Will Smith's character, Chris Gardner, gets the job at the brokerage, and do you know the film well, Alice? Do you know the scene I'm talking about?
I do, and it's beautiful. It is a fist pump moment. It also makes me cry without fail every time I see it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's amazing. It's an amazing acting performance from him, and like it's and then there's a lovely shot. It's in slow motion of him walking down the street, and it's packed with the kind of commuters, and he's just there, sort of celebrating to himself amongst everybody else who's just going about their daily life. I loved that. I still do.
Beautiful moment. Fist pump moment. Agreed. We're playing that. What are we playing after that, Ross? Fist pump moment?
My fist pump moment would be the Mel Gibson's William Wallace speech in Braveheart. When I watched that really young again, and it's just the most rousing movie speech of all time. Surely it's just so, people give him a hard time for his accent. I don't even care. Don't even care. I think it's just the most remarkable, political speech moment in a movie that I can think of, and it made me want to go into battle with Mel Gibson at the age of 12. So there we go.
It's a wonderful moment. There are two pre-battle rousing motivational speeches that I think really are just wonderful moments. That's one, and as a Lord of the Rings fan, I'm sure you'll agree. Do you know what I'm going to say, don't you?
Yeah. Are you going to go for the Return of the King into Aragorn's into where am I?
I was going to say Bernard Hill when he's riding up and down King Theoden, when he's riding up and down just before the Battle of Minas Tirith.
That's I was thinking of the For Frodo moment, but that is probably better what you've gone for there. Yeah, they're chock-a-block full of them. It's a great opportunity, isn't it? The pre-battle speech.
It's a great moment. We're playing it. The cinema screen goes dark. We're awaiting the next moment, which is what you consider cinema's most shocking moment. Ross?
I have gone for quite a recent one. I've gone for the basement scene in Parasite, the sort of discovery scene in Parasite halfway through. That really. Tom, you're smiling. Is that what you've got?
I've gone for the same.
It was bound to happen sooner or later. There we go.
So did you watch it together or you watched it separately?
I think must have watched it separately, but I put that down. I actually should have gone back and rewatched it. Specifically that scene to kind of dissect. I just feel like from memory, there's like a collusion of sort of the music that happens and the particular cuts and everything that happens, and how it's not just the fact that he's down, that like exactly how he is revealed to us is the sort of most unsettling. Oh gosh, it was such a great moment.
Great movie, yeah. Great movie.
It is a great movie. Do you watch the Oscars? Obviously, you've been to the Oscars, but do you remember that moment where Parasite won Best Picture? I was covering the Oscars at the time, and it was I had a panel that just were like fist pumping, to go back to our last question, fist pumping the air because of what a great moment it was when Parasite won Best Picture.
Yeah, so deserved. And I remember his brilliant speech where he spoke about foreign language film, and he said, if we can all get over this 1 inch thing of subtitles, you'll open the world for yourselves to the best cinema that you've not seen yet. So yeah, what a guy, what a guy.
Great stuff. I love the fact you both picked. I'm just going to call it the basement scene because we've danced around it, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen Parasite. So the basement scene in Parasite is cinema's most shocking moment. Oh, we're getting closer. Only a couple of things left before we play the movies you've picked. So next up, the line or piece of dialogue from a movie that most affected you, Tom.
Can I give you my runner-up really quickly, which is just a very specific one? Like the actual film itself, I don't have like strong memories of, but like back when me and Ross were acting, I remember like really loving this like performance of this line, which was Kate Blanchett as Queen Elizabeth in Elizabeth, and there's this scene where a sort of Spanish kind of aide comes in and insults her, and she has a line where she turns around, and I think it's something like she's like, I can control the wind, so, and she's like, there is a fire in me that will strip Spain bare if ever you dare to try me. And it's just that like such an amazing delivery of the line. I think people should just go and watch it. I think if you typed in like I can command the wind or something like that, just the weight and the sort of gravitas of it. But my actual choice was again from The Pursuit of Happiness, and it's when Will Smith turns to his son and he's like, he says, don't ever let somebody tell you can't do something. You got a dream, you got to protect it. People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you that you can't do it. If you want something, go get it, period. And I used to like watch that scene like and kind of knew that like a line like a little mantra, and yeah, it was a very sort of like formative film for me, like growing up, and I that line sort of stayed with me ever since. Lines plural.
When you say it was like a mantra, I mean like genuinely a mantra, like you repeated it to yourself when you were having moments of self-doubt?
Absolutely, and like it's got such a strange affinity with Will Smith, and this is true. When I was auditioning for drama schools, I used to listen to, on my journey to the auditions, a YouTube clip which was 45 minutes of motivational quotes by Will Smith. And so he was like geeing me up for my auditions, and that line was always in there. And there were loads of other ones as well. There was another one he had where he's in an interview and he's like, he who says he can and he who says he can't are both usually right. And I used to love all these little tidbits that I would just take away from him in these motivational speeches. And that one, yeah, particularly, I think me and Ross share a bit of a kind of work ethic, and the kind of entrepreneurial spirit, I suppose, is the thing that like brought us together as friends. And I think we've always sort of held a bit of like the belief that anything should be possible if you're willing to sort of work hard enough for it and work harder than the person next to you, kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's probably got something to do with it, that film and that line.
That's fantastic. And yes, it's wonderful that you found each other, because I think a lot of people do need another person when it comes to that that motivation, which I think you give another person when it comes to really, really understanding the amount of work and effort that goes into forging a career, especially in the creative industries where everyone is trying to do the same thing. Having someone alongside you in the moments where you have lost faith in it, when you have lost that motivation to go, no, we're good here. We're good. Remember why we're doing this. That must be, you touched on it earlier, but that must be so important, Ross.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, that's I think it's so crucial, as you say, and we're very fortunate. We are very fortunate to find each other at a young age as well, because I know people, trying to find somebody who shares your sensibility, but also we've developed a sensibility as well, together as we've sort of grown up. So, it's a crucial thing, and I guess for any aspiring filmmakers, even if you've not found your person yet, it's not always just one person. It's about finding your people, you know, and you're kind of, you see great filmmakers who sort of grow with crews and grow with a DP and grow with, you know,
Yeah.
the filmmaker Robert Eggers, his DP has worked on everything he's ever done from his short films right through to his feature films. So that's a great, you know, a great sort of story as well.
So we have a wonderful quote from Will Smith. We're playing it through the Dolby Atmos speakers from The Pursuit of Happiness. What's the next quote we're playing, Ross? What's your quote to equal that beautiful story that Tom told about Will Smith in The Pursuit of Happiness?
Well, I'm going to return to my not so unpopular movie, Finding Nemo, for the quote that I think sums up the whole film. And I love when lines can sort of distill a movie. And it is the line where, about halfway through the movie, Marlon says to Dory, "I promised him I'd never let anything happen to him." And she says, "Well, that's a funny thing to promise, because if you never let anything happen to him, nothing would ever happen to him." And it just so perfectly punctures that protagonist's flawed belief, and shows us, you know, what the movie is going to continue to be about. And I just, yeah, when I reread that recently and really heard that line again, I just thought that's perfect. That is the movie in a line.
That's such a wonderful quote. I love that. You said when you reread that line, do you read screenplays when you were starting your writing career as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I try to. I do. We both try to as much as possible. You know, they're sort of, I mean, the great ones are easy enough to read, but you know, screenplays are sort of not really for the reading. They're blueprints, but it is super helpful. It is super helpful when we do get round to reading and seeing how other, you know, masters do things on the page, and how that then translates. And what's a great exercise sometimes is to have a script open with you and have the movie playing and sort of just literally kind of compare the two. And that's been very useful for me, at least.
Right. Guys, the final thing we're going to do before we declare to Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, and this packed auditorium, the movies you've picked, is play the best use of music in a movie. Tom.
So I feel like of all the answers, this is the one that I feel like I stand behind with the most conviction, and I think it is in Andrew Arnold's Fish Tank, final scene where the mum and the two daughters dance to "Life's a Bitch and Then You Die" by Nas, and it seems like a fairly sort of not bizarre choice, because it's actually a very like sort of specific and kind of well observed choice of music for this. Mum is playing it on the CD and the daughter has gifted it to her, and then there is just this shot of the three of them sort of doing this improvised dance routine. And obviously, you know, Andrew Arnold like works in that kind of free sort of improvised space very, very well, and it's just the kind of the culmination of exactly like how beautiful that style of filmmaking can be. And I just think that like I really, really loved the film, watching it, and then that moment happened, and it kind of just took it to a completely different sort of stratosphere for me. And I think it's all down to that song choice, perfectly feeling like, you know, should it work with what we're actually seeing here, but taking things to a completely different level. So yeah, that would be my choice.
And I think you're right. It feels so naturalistic, such an authentic moment.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. It feels perfect and it feels right. But there were 99 other songs she could have chosen that were authentic and right, and they were all wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that was the right one.
Right. We're watching that moment from Fish Tank. Then we're playing what, Ross? The movie moment, the best use of music in a movie.
Well, I feel like our guests, Quentin Tarantino and Martin Scorsese, are two of the best at needle drops in movies. So I sort of went between those two and some of the great music that they both picked. And I was thinking of Reservoir Dogs and Stuck in the Middle with You and that great. But I actually settled on Goodfellas and Cream, Sunshine of Your Love. And the moment where De Niro stands there, cool as a cucumber, smoking a cigarette, looking at, is it Morris that he's looking at? And he's just realizes he's got to kill him. And he does absolutely not. Like he just stands there and cool as cucumber looks at him, and it just is the most fusion.
When they were with either writing the screenplay or doing very early work, and Scorsese was with his collaborator, whoever it was, and when they kind of got to that moment, he was like, "Write down cream," and the guy was like, "What, cream? Like write down cream?" And like he knew like exactly how he was going to shoot that moment and what it was going to be.
Perfect cinema.
Perfect cinema. Excuse me. Right then. On that note of perfect cinema, it's now time to announce to this packed auditorium, to two of the greatest living filmmakers on the planet, Quentin Tarantino and Martin Scorsese, the movies you have picked for us to screen tonight. What are we watching, Tom?
I started to feel like daunted by choosing Quentin Tarantino as my guest, because I was like, what do I pick that firstly he hasn't seen and that he would approve of as a choice? And then I just tied myself in knots over that, and I thought, like, I'm not going to be able to think of anything that's going to impress him or is that he hasn't seen. So I've chosen Hook. And I've chosen Hook because probably of all the films that I was watching when I was growing up, like the one that captured my imagination the most and made me fall in love with the power of storytelling, and I could probably go toe to toe with him talking about it. I think it's just a wonderful, masterful sort of reimagining of that story, and I've never seen it on the big screen, of course. I've never seen it on the DVD at home, so I'd love to see it on a cinema screen.
So we have two of the greatest living filmmakers in Tarantino and Scorsese watching the other greatest living filmmaker, Steven Spielberg, on the big screen. It's a film that Spielberg, I don't think he loves himself. I certainly don't understand why people have love for Hook, but I would love to know why it meant so much to you.
I think it's the Step Brothers thing as well, about like when you saw it and the kind of the age that you kind of discovered it. It was one of the sort of few like VCR like that we had, and I just binged it, and I think I just saw it at that formative time when my kind of the kind of scope of my imagination was as the widest it's ever been, and I just loved the story, and I'm so surprised that he wouldn't. I suppose when you've got a canon of work as impressive as a canon of work, it would make sense. Might not rank in your top five, but for me, it just has a very, very special sort of resonance to the child in me, that's sort of still there, and it's that.
That is a lovely answer, and I will say, while I'm not a fan, I could watch Bob Hoskins as Shmi every day of the week.
There you go.
There we go.
Right, so next to Hook, the double bill for Tarantino and Scorsese. They're chomping at the bit. They want to know what they're finishing their night off with. Ross.
I've also gone quite sentimental because when I was a kid, we had 3 VHS tapes that I just played on a loop every night while I ate my dinner, and they were Shrek, they were Mrs. Doubtfire, and they were Calamity Jane, the musical.
So which one are you picking?
He's gone for Doubtfire.
I'm actually picking Calamity Jane, the musical, because I know every word of that movie. Doris Day in that movie is perfection. It's proper old cinema, and I've never seen it on the big screen as well, so I'd love to see it on the big screen.
So Calamity Jane, this is such a weird one for me. Like it's the first musical I ever saw, and you'll know more than me because I have one sketchy memory of it. But whip crack away, whip crack away, whip crack away.
Yeah, the Deadwood stage. That's it. Yeah, she's coming over that. It's brilliant, like early sort of moving backgrounds. It's just brilliant movie making, and you've got that great Francis Fryer sequence in the middle where a guy shows up and he's meant to be a female performer, and then he puts on the dress and does the whole cabaret show. It's just such a great movie. It's like proper one of those golden age movies that I just watched so much, and I used to watch it with my grandmother as well. So that would be a fun little one to see in the cinema as a memory, a sentimental choice.
I love the fact you've both gone sentimental on this. Hook, followed by Calamity Jane, is our double bill to end the night. And that's it. The guests are milling out. Martin Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino are thanking you for taking them on a phenomenal trip to the movies. But before you go, it's time for this week's big question, where I ask you, as filmmakers, to tell us and our listeners an exclusive, never before heard piece of information about your filmmaking careers, past, present, or future.
Oh, it's a great question. Need to match it with a great answer. A piece of trivia.
I'm going to go for one which is when we were making The Golden West, our most recent short film that's out. It's had a lovely start to its festival life, but it wasn't always kind of easy going. When we shot that film, it was in winter, the middle of winter in Snowdonia in North Wales, and the conditions were brutal. I mean, really awful. And we sort of, I think we finished the second day of shooting, and everybody had been trying so hard, but we just weren't sort of capturing everything we were looking for. And Tom and I sat in our tiny little, I think it was like a Travelodge hotel room, and we just shared a room, and we just said, I don't know if we've bitten off more than we can chew here. And it was such a sad moment. It was like the low point of making that film. And then we had 3 more days on the shoot, and we picked ourselves back up and went for it and managed to get just what we needed. So I thought I'd mention that because sometimes in all of the fun and the great stuff happening, it can feel like everything's just easy breezy, but it most certainly wasn't. That was a brutal, brutal shoot.
And then mine would be that in a similar vein, when we wrote that script in sort of January time, in sort of 2022, and it took us about 9 months to get the sort of funding together to make it. And we kind of were thinking recently, and we're going back through all of the efforts that we had done to kind of, get everything together. And I think we wrote somewhere between 100 and 150 emails, out to folks kind of all across the world, whether they were kind of interested in the famine story, the emigration story of the Irish, or whether they were sort of like interested in supporting young filmmakers. It might even be more emails than that, probably collectively between us, but it felt like for the longest time our day-to-day was just cold emailing people to try and give us the permission really to make the film. And it's I don't know, it's like maybe a kind of an insight into a lot. It's a miracle that a lot of short films kind of ever happen, because that's not an experience that's going to be just for us. I'm sure every short filmmaker can kind of empathize with that struggle, and again also then to say how thankful we are for the people that did come and back us off the back of the script and the kind of materials that we put together, because there was a sort of an ambition to the project, and you need people to kind of get behind your kind of emerging filmmakers. So yeah, does that I if we think of anything else, I'll jump in, but that's what we've got for now.
No, those are both amazing answers, and you're right, Tom. That offers a huge insight into just the effort that goes into making a short film. Because this is the Golden West you're talking about, where you sent these emails out. So you're at this point Oscar-winning filmmakers, and yet you are still having to send out 150 plus emails to get investment for your next short film.
It was, I mean, because of when it was, it was actually pre-Oscars, but it was still, An Irish Goodbye was going really well and picked up some wins, and that was definitely helpful in kind of attracting some attention. But if you're not lucky enough to go down sort of the more public funding route, and you're having to sort of do it independently, it really can be a labor of love, but the emphasis is on the love part.
And you are a testament, both of you, to what that love can produce. That's it, guys. Your taxi has arrived to ferry you back to reality. But before you go, let's recap your perfect night at the movies. You are going with Quentin Tarantino and Martin Scorsese at 8 p.m. in the evening. You're sitting wherever Quentin wants to sit on recliners, because Ross has picked them for him and Marty. We're going to say the middle of the middle. We're going to wait for Tarantino to confirm if that is his ideal seating choice. We are eating absolutely nothing for Tom, and a large popcorn and a huge Coke for Ross that Tom is going to stare at disapprovingly for the duration of the night. The first poster we're putting up depicts your fondest movie memories, Stormbreaker for Tom, and Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers for Ross. The next poster that depicts your worst movie memories, Paranormal Activity for Tom, and Going on a First Date to Nanny McPhee for Ross. The third poster is The Last Performance That Brought You to Tears, Paul Giamatti and The Holdovers for Tom, and for Ross, it was Marriage Story. Am I right? It was Marriage Story.
That was it. That was it.
Okay, good. Okay, your unpopular movie opinion posters. So, a genuine unpopular movie opinion from Tom. Step Brothers, not funny. Ross, Finding Nemo is a good film.
No.
The trailers were playing for the movies you're most looking forward to. A couple of Ridley Scott joints, Gladiator 2 for Tom and Napoleon for Ross. Next up, the movie moment that makes you pump your fist in the air. For Tom, it's The Pursuit of Happiness ending. For Ross, Braveheart's Mel Gibson pre-battle motivational speech. The movie moment that you consider most shocking. Parasite's basement scene for both of you. The line or piece of dialogue that most affected you. For Tom, it's the don't let somebody tell you can't do something. From The Pursuit of Happiness for Ross, it's when Marlon tells Dory, I promised I'd never let anything happen to him. That moment. The best use of music in a movie. It's the Nas Life's a Bitch dance at the end of Fish Tank for Tom. De Niro realizing he has to kill Morris in Goodfellas to Cream for Ross. And then we are watching an incredible double bill of Hook and Calamity Jane. Gentlemen, thank you for that trip to the movies. Have you had a good time?
It's been a blast.
Great time. And we've got a very, very highbrow double bill of films there for those two filmmakers to enjoy with us.
I love it. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful journey. I'll say goodbye now. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Alex.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for watching this interview. I'd love it if you would check out some of the other interviews on our channel. They're all fascinating and unique trips to the movies with some wonderful, wonderful guests. And if you would like to find out more, do hit us up on our social channels. We are at Trip to Movies Pod. That's at Trip to Movies Pod on all social media with lovely content on there. And you can get in touch with us if you so wish. Thanks again.